up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at Noon. President Park's pick for Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo is in the hot seat again. For the second and final day of his confirmation hearing, he's expected to field even more tough questions today. The Korean government vows to go all out to help the country's biggest firms. The companies say they'll invest more than $30 billion into various projects this year. Plus, the United States confirms the death of an American female aid worker who had been held hostage by Islamic State militants in Syria. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
Good to have you with us on this rather gloomy Wednesday here in Seoul. I'm Lee Ji-yoon.
And I'm Mark Broome. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. Our top story this afternoon, the Korean government is planning to go all out in supporting the nation's biggest firms to help them boost corporate investment.
Yes, and the Commerce Minister says the government is willing to remove regulations hindering the company's funding plans. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
The government has vowed to do all it can to boost corporate investment. Korea's Commerce Minister Yoon Sang-jin made the pledge on Wednesday at a meeting with business leaders of 16 key companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor. He said the government will provide all necessary support to encourage big businesses to plow more money into the economy. Yoon added that business leaders should not hesitate in laying out their difficulties and stressed the government will do what it can to remove any obstacles. The companies say they will invest a combined $31.4 billion into projects that begin this year. About half is made up from Samsung's new semiconductor production line in Pyeongtaek, which will be twice as big as its current one in Suwon. The government has expedited equipping electricity infrastructure by more than 1 year on Samsung's request. Samsung wants to speed up construction of the production line. Minister Yoon also called for corporate restructuring through mergers and acquisitions, citing the example of Samsung selling its chemical sector to Hanwha Group late last year in a bid to focus on its strengths and reduce costs through structural reforms. The Commerce Ministry will hold a similar meeting with the heads of foreign companies before the end of the month. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Well, the number of new jobs added in Korea last month dropped to its lowest level in almost 2 years. Data from Statistics Korea shows the number of people with jobs stood at slightly over 25 million in January, up around 350,000 from a year ago. The agency says, however, that the slowing growth came from the high base effect in January last year, when Korea created more than 700,000 jobs. It added that the Lunar New Year holiday, one of Korea's biggest holidays, fell in January last year, creating more jobs in the retail and transportation sectors. This year's Lunar New Year holiday falls in February this year.
Korea's export prices dropped to their lowest level in 28 years last month due to falling global oil prices and the strengthening Korean won against the greenback. The Bank of Korea says the prices plunged by over 4% in January from a month earlier. That means local exporters earn that much less in local currency when shipping out the same amount of goods. But import prices fell by a bigger margin than export prices, also on the back of falling oil prices, giving local exporters some leeway. Import prices tumbled 7.3% last month from a month ago. Finance ministers and central bankers from G20 nations have issued a written communiqué on what they think developed economies should do to boost the sluggish global economy. Shin Se-min reports.
The world's 20 largest economies vow to address uneven global economic growth by using monetary and fiscal policy to prevent further stagnation. Wrapping up the two-day G20 finance ministers meeting in Istanbul, the finance ministers and central bankers emphasized the need for structural reform in boosting the fragile global economy. In their written communiqué released Tuesday, the officials vowed to continuously review monetary and fiscal policy settings and act decisively if needed. The text made note of sluggish growth in the Eurozone and Japan, adding that some of the emerging market economies are also slowing down. But it said the European Central Bank's recent quantitative easing policy would support further recovery in the Eurozone area. On tumbling global oil prices, financial officials called on countries to take advantage of low oil prices to further investment. The statement said the sharp decline in oil prices will provide some boost to global growth, but with varying implications across economies by increasing the purchasing power of oil importing economies and exerting temporary downward pressure on inflation. The meeting of the finance leaders and central bankers comes at a difficult time as major economies are running at different speeds with monetary policies diverging, and the troubles in Greece casting a long shadow over the Eurozone economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, Apple, already riding high on the success of its latest iPhone 6 models, has set yet another first in the corporate world, becoming the first company in history to have a market value of over $700 billion. The California-based firm's stock closed up nearly 2% on Tuesday at a record high of slightly over $122, making Apple worth an estimated $710.8 billion. Just to give you an idea of how huge Apple is now, if you were to combine Google and Microsoft, their combined market cap would only be worth a few $1 billion more than Apple's. This enviable new record comes a matter of weeks after Apple reported staggering profits of $18 billion in the fourth quarter of last year.
Shifting our focus to family of the American women held hostage by the Islamic State in Syria say they're heartbroken after the militant group sent them information saying their daughter is dead. U.S. President Barack Obama vowed to bring her captors to justice. With more, here's our Kim Hyun-bin.
The United States has confirmed the death of an American female aid worker held hostage by the Islamic State militant group in Syria. Islamic State said last Friday that 26-year-old Kayla Mueller was killed in a Jordanian airstrike on the IS stronghold of Raqqa. IS didn't offer any proof to back up its assertion, and the U.S. government remains skeptical about the group's claim. However, U.S. authorities said Tuesday that Ms. Mueller's family received a private message from IS this week with additional information, which confirmed she was dead. Sources who have been briefed on the evidence of death have told U.S. media that it consisted of at least 3 photographs, all headshots. That said, it's not known whether the injuries seen in the photos were consistent with the militant group's claim that she died in an airstrike. Ms. Mueller is the only American woman known to have died in IS captivity. In recent months, Islamic State has beheaded 3 Americans, 2 Britons, and 2 Japanese hostages, most of them aid workers and journalists. In a statement, U.S. President Barack Obama said he condemned the terrorist group and stated that those responsible for Ms. Mueller's death will be brought to justice. This latest development comes as multiple sources say President Obama will send Congress an authorization for the use of military force to fight IS on Wednesday. The president is expected to ask for a 3-year authorization. It will also leave open the option to send in ground troops if needed. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, NBC News has suspended its star anchor and face of American broadcast news, really, Brian Williams, for 6 months without pay after he admitted that a story he told about an experience he said he had during the Iraq War was not true. Kim Min-ji has more.
Brian Williams, a trusted newsman whose NBC Nightly News drew over 9 million viewers a night, is now suspended for 6 months without pay. This decision follows his voluntary step back from the news desk over the weekend. The president of NBC News, Deborah Turnus, said in an internal memo Tuesday that what Williams did was, quote, wrong and completely inappropriate for someone in his position. The NBC News anchor was put in the hot seat after he admitted that his account of the helicopter incident in Iraq was not true. Williams reported in January that he was on a helicopter that was hit by a grenade in Iraq in 2003. However, military veterans from the incident said he was not actually on the helicopter that was forced down.
I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft.
However, there is a chance that the star anchor could make a comeback. The CEO of NBC Universal, Steve Burke, said Tuesday that although Williams jeopardized the trust millions of Americans place in NBC News, he deserves a second chance. Williams has been anchoring NBC Nightly News for over a decade, succeeding Tom Brokaw. For now, Lester Holt will continue to substitute for Williams. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo is undergoing another round of tough questions on the second and final day of his confirmation hearing. He's facing a number of allegations about his wealth and whether he tried to influence media coverage on his advantage. Our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won tells us more.
The second day of the confirmation hearing for the nation's Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo began on Wednesday. Lawmakers from both parties are continuing their inquiries into a series of allegations against the former ruling Saenuri Party floor leader. In an apparent show of support for the nominee, his fellow Saenuri Party lawmakers focused primarily on questions about his future policy goals. Lawmakers from the main opposition party, meanwhile, pressed the 65-year-old nominee on allegations surrounding his family's wealth, his involvement in real estate speculation, and questions about his election campaign funds. On the first day of the hearing, the 65-year-old nominee was grilled about some of the other allegations, including whether he tried to meddle with the media after he boasted he could pull strings at news media outlets in a private meeting with journalists, and whether he and his son properly fulfilled their mandatory military service. Meanwhile, the main opposition party's new chairman Moon Jae-in hinted that his party might not confirm the nominee. He said that even though the party had hoped to confirm him, as this is the third attempt to replace the incumbent Prime Minister Chung Hong-won, it might be difficult. Speaking at the party's Supreme Council meeting on Wednesday morning, Moon added that the party will decide its official stance on the nominee after the two-day confirmation hearing that's scheduled to end Wednesday. The previous two nominees both withdrew their names from consideration due to mounting allegations surrounding their past. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, currently on a tour of Asia, says interkorean talks might be key to denuclearizing North Korea. He also said that it's completely up to President Park Geun-hye on whether or not she decides to attend Russia's anniversary event in the spring and meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un there. Our Kim Young-gil tells us more.
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said the U.S. strongly supports President Park Geun-hye's efforts to hold inter-Korean talks as it could help pave the way for Pyongyang to drop its nuclear ambitions. However, he believes Pyongyang is not showing sincerity towards positive engagement or denuclearization. And whether President Park meets with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at a war anniversary ceremony in Russia is solely her decision. Blinken's trip to Seoul comes amid lingering concerns that Washington's tougher stance on North Korea may hamper Seoul's bid for dialogue. U.S. slapped fresh sanctions on North Korea last month following its alleged cyber attack on Sony Pictures. Before departing for China, the top American official stressed the role of Beijing and its exceptional leverage over Pyongyang. He said the biggest instability in the region was Pyongyang's nuclear pursuit and that China could persuade Pyongyang to resume credible disarmament talks, given its long-standing ties. At his last stop in Tokyo, the high-ranking U.S. official is expected to discuss regional issues such as Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul continues to demand a sincere apology from Tokyo over the matter as a catalyst to break the current icy relations between the neighboring countries. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee has spoken with one voice, unanimously voting to approve Ashton Carter as the next U.S. Secretary of Defense. The 25-0 vote signals the former Deputy Defense Secretary is unlikely to face much, if any, Republican resistance to his confirmation when it goes to a full Senate vote. A source at the Senate says the full chamber will probably vote on Carter's nomination on Wednesday or Thursday. If that's the case, Carter could start his new role at the Pentagon by the end of the week. The 60-year-old, who has tough views on how to deal with North Korea's nuclear weapons program, was U.S. President Barack Obama's first pick to replace outgoing Defense Chief Chuck Hagel.
Ultra-right-wing groups in Japan are going all out with hate speech rallies targeting ethnic Koreans. The campaigns have stopped short of physical violence, but there are real worries now that things could turn even uglier. But while local governments are calling for legal measures to ban such rallies, the Abe administration is turning a blind eye. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Insults against Koreans fly across the streets of the Japanese capital, Tokyo. The number of hate rallies against some 500,000 ethnic Koreans has risen sharply in Japan. The campaigners say they cannot tolerate the privileges, such as the right to vote and access to welfare, bestowed to Korean residents. They justify the racial discrimination as their right to freedom of speech.
What I'm doing is politics. Some say politics and discrimination is different, but it's all the same.
It's a serious matter that has been taken to the international stage. In August, the United Nations Human Rights Committee demanded Japan add hate speech to legislation that bans racial discrimination. In December, the Supreme Court upheld a ruling by Osaka's High Court, the city with the largest Korean population, which ordered an ultra-right group pay a $120,000 fine for its hate speech rally. But the Abe administration has remained passive, saying the issue is under review. Since the beginning of the year, 24 local governments have taken the matter into their own hands, pressuring the central government to take legal measures.
It's extremely dangerous to protect comments like kill someone under the banner of freedom of expression.
While the Abe administration turns a blind eye to racial discrimination, concerns are rising as ultra-right-wing groups are planning a large-scale hate speech rally later this month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, to some rather shocking news that came in earlier today. There has been a massive collision involving over 60 cars and vehicles of certain sorts on the Yongjong Bridge in going out of the city of Incheon. Police in Gyeonggi-do province said earlier today that the accident occurred at around 9:40 a.m., so around 2.5 hours ago, and there was thick fog covering the area. So far, one person is confirmed dead, over 30 others wounded, but police say more casualties are expected given the severity of the situation. You can see the video there. Police are currently looking into the cause of this gigantic accident, and of course, we will bring you more details on this story as it develops in our later newscasts.
Let's continue our look through the global headlines. We're following this hour from Seoul with Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Eunice, the British bank HSBC is under fire after a report revealed its private Swiss bank subsidiary had helped its super-rich clients conceal their assets and dodge paying taxes.
That's right, Mark. The reports cite leaked bank documents that they say show more than 100,000 customers around the world are suspected of this deed, and this includes clients from right here in Korea. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
HSBC has found itself in hot water following a revelation by an international team of journalists that found the bank maintained secret accounts for a variety of tax-dodging criminals, politicians, and celebrities. The BBC report says that between 2005 and 2007, HSBC's private banking arm in Switzerland assisted in concealing billions of dollars in assets of more than 100,000 customers so they could evade tax authorities. The revelation showed the private bank managed accounts including Saudi businessmen who are under suspicions of once funding Osama bin Laden as well as the King of Jordan. It also uncovered some 20 bank accounts owned by Korean nationals worth some $21 million. Responding to allegations, the financial giant said it was cooperating with relevant authorities to ensure its private banking services aren't used to evade taxes and launder money. CEO of the private bank, Franco Mora, said a new senior management team had since overhauled the business. The list was originally compiled from a massive cache of data of former HSBC employees smuggled out and leaked when he quit in 2008. As government investigative teams around the world launch their own probes, the whistleblower says this revelation is just the tip of the iceberg. 손정인, Arirang News.
On to other news now. Eyes are on the Belarusian capital of Minsk today, where the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France will sit around a table to try to hammer out a peace plan to end the bloody 10-month-old conflict in eastern Ukraine. Lower-level officials, representatives from the OSCE, and pro-Russian separatist groups arrived in Minsk ahead of the top-level summit. On the agenda are reportedly charting out a new demilitarized zone and also withdrawing heavy weaponry, among others. Meanwhile, on the summit's eve, deadly fighting kicked up in eastern Ukraine. Officials say at least 7 civilians were killed and dozens of others hurt when rebels launched rocket attacks on a residential area and a key military base. In the city of Mariupol, a volunteer battalion fighting on the side of Kiev called Azov launched an offensive against the separatists. Now on to skirmishes in cyberspace. The Islamic State group hacked into Newsweek magazine's Twitter account on Tuesday, posting a banner with the words Cyber Caliphate and Jeshui IS. It tweeted a message addressed to the First Lady, you can see there, threatening the family of U.S. President Barack Obama. Newsweek was able to clear up its Twitter page by mid-morning local time. Meanwhile, the global hacking group Anonymous said it disabled the Facebook and Twitter accounts of the IS group, posting a YouTube video in which it promises to expose the extremists.
Good afternoon. More fine dust are blowing into the peninsula today, and we still have lingering dust from yesterday, so it's dustier outside in most upper parts of the nation. So try not to be outdoors for too long because dust levels will not come back into the normal range till the late this evening. In the meantime, some regions will see passing showers later in the day, and that rain could turn into snow for Chungcheongdo and Gyeonggi-do provinces, though the accumulation should be less than 1 centimeter. And temperature-wise, it should be a bit higher than yesterday, so let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 6, while the top temperature in Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 11 and 9, and Busan will rise to 12 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island, Daejeon should see a high of 12 and 9 respectively, and Dokdo rises to 7. Now the readings look to be promising till the end of the weekend, but we have rain in the forecast on Sunday, and that could be a nationwide afternoon shower. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
All right, that does it for now, but we'll be back right here at the same time tomorrow.
We certainly will. Thank you ever so much for watching and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Goodbye.